For now, I'd like to take a look at a couple of other examples where you'll need to introduce transparency into your image. It's not uncommon to get an object such as a building or maybe a product shot against a colored background, and they want you to knock the background out so you have just the object. Maybe it's to make a product screen or a button for a DVD menu. Well, there's several ways of going about this. Beginners will often do things like use the magic wand, and they'll try to select everything here in the sky, and they'll start to click and shift click, and they think they're getting pretty good results. Except if we zoom in here and look closely, we'll discover that we have a lot of fringe problems. We don't have a clean edge here. Well, there's a couple of ways we can go about this instead. First off, you need to turn this layer into an actual layer, not a background. So I'll double click and I'll name this. It's the Hancock Building in Chicago. One of the tricks I find most helpful is to place a solid color in the background. Usually a color that's different than the one I'm removing. In this case, I've placed a bright red background just so I could see how good my edges are. And we'll lower this layer to the back. Command left bracket or Control left bracket on a PC. And I turn this back on. Well, we highlight the Hancock Building layer, and there's several ways I can go about this. I might choose to take my Polygonal Lasso tool. And this allows me to start to click and draw around the building. And I could get in pretty tight. And I think I'm doing pretty okay here. I'm a master of the lasso, of course. And we'll get a little bit of the water tower place here. And I come back and close the loop. And I think, perfect, I've got that building. Copy, paste. Only problem is when I look at that building, it doesn't look so good. Let's zoom into some of these top edges here. Well, I did a pretty bad job on that tower there. There's a lot of blue around it, and it's uneven, it's been chopped in. There's a better way. Instead of chopping this layer out and copying it, we're going to mask it, which is a non-destructive way to erase something. So I select the layer here, and I need to reselect this building. Well, even if you like using the magic wand, you don't need to call it back up. At any point in time in a document, if it's been open, you can reload the last selection. I just go to the Select menu and I say Reselect, or Shift-Command-D, or Shift-Control-D. That creates a new selection here. I can highlight my layer and go to the bottom of the Layers palette and choose to add a new layer mask. That will place a mask on the layer. And you'll see that we have a black and white image. White is where the building is, black is where it's transparent. If I click on the thumbnail of the image, this changes to a paintbrush, and I'm painting on the image. If I click on the mask thumbnail, this changes to a mask, and I'm painting on the mask. So we can come in here and zoom in and start to work on this in small portions. I'm on the mask thumbnail, I grab my paintbrush, and I'm going to get a smaller brush, left bracket. Shift left bracket will give me a softer brush. Shift right bracket will give me a harder brush. And these are great shortcuts to just improve your brush tip. We can click, I hold down the Shift key and click again, it draws the straight line. In fact, I could zoom all the way out here and just click at the top, hold down the Shift key and come down to the bottom, and click again and it draws a straight line, cleaning up that edge dramatically. And I could work my way in. So I'm going to go ahead and use that to just get these outside edges cleaned up a little bit. And if we zoom in, we'll discover that that edge of the building looks a lot better. Hold down the space bar and I can move around the image. So we got that problem solved. B for brush, here we go, get the last little bit. But these towers, they don't look so good. What we really need to do is we need to paint some of that tower back in using a small brush. So if black erased, white will add. D for default colors loads up my white. And now I could just paint that tower back in. Come in here a little bit tighter, get my brush, and I'm going to paint with a little bit of black. D for default colors, X to toggle. The mnemonic for that is Devil's Xylophone. And just keep going with a soft edge brush, getting closer and closer, shift clicking back and forth. And this allows me to just eat away at that edge until I get a nice clean edge. Smaller brush perhaps will help. Paint some of that in, flip back my colors, and paint away what I don't want. Perhaps one of the coolest things though is you can even grab your blur tool, and I could just blur that edge a little bit so it's not so jagged. It doesn't blur the image, it just blurs the edge. And when you look at those results now, they're dramatically better. I successfully extracted that image from its background, and here's the good news. Client comes in the next day and says, "Oh, you misunderstood me." It's always your fault, of course. "You misunderstood me. I didn't mean erase the sky." Well, the mask is non-destructive. You could just shift click on it and turn it off. All that data is still there. Masking is an extremely powerful way to have great control over transparency in your image. It's non-destructive, it's very easy to refine, and you can harness your paintbrush engine and your blur tools to get really nice edges. Also remember, it's very helpful to go ahead and place a high contrast color behind your image. In doing so, it becomes a lot easier to see your edges. Now, when we want to store transparency, we do this. I'm going to turn that red off because I don't need it. And I'm actually going to disable the layer mask. However, you want to command click on the thumbnail for the layer mask. If you're on a PC, control click. This will load the transparency of that mask. There it is. And just like last time, switch to channels and save it as a selection. Go to the channels palette, and at the bottom, you can click on the icon that says Save Selection as a Channel. And there is your alpha channel. And the transparency will be preserved in the document when you save off a picked file or a target file. This works perfectly and will oftentimes give you real-time keying in your timeline.